Well, I'm delighted to be associated with this initiative by Brainwiz, simply because I think we're living in a world where internationalism and international issues are going to impact on our lives. It's also essential that we as a large country with a long tradition and history have to take a much more active role in international issues. How are we going to do that? Well, there is much that is happening at the international level under the UN, under various agreements and treaties. But unless civil society gets involved, unless civil society understands the importance of internationalism and global issues that are of relevance to us, we are going to reach only part of the way. And that's why I think the best way to get started is to involve students. They must understand that while we are, of course, very loyal and patriotic citizens of India, we are also citizens of planet Earth, and we have to get engaged in all that is happening at the international level. I just want to mention briefly, this morning I read an interview with the King of Norway, who I've met. He was asked whether he believes that the 21st century will be the century of Asia. And he says, yes, of course, and that century has started. So we are already 14 years into this century, and we have to really build up momentum in being part of global affairs. And I think Brainwiz, what it's doing, is really an excellent initiative in that direction. You know, Einstein was absolutely right when he said problems can't be solved at the level of awareness that created them. But today there is awareness. And you know, I've been privileged to be chairman of the IPCC since 2002. This was a body that was established in 1988 because the global community and the UN realized that you needed an authoritative, credible scientific effort to assess climate change. And therefore this was set up as an intergovernmental body. And I think what the IPCC has been able to do in these 27 years or 26 years of its existence is clearly something that has created awareness on the reality of climate change, the scientific understanding of what climate change is all about, its impacts and how we can deal with this problem. So in that sense, I would say you are very well equipped, because obviously when you started schooling, climate change was hardly known as something that was happening globally. And frankly, you were not alone, because even today there are people who just don't know or don't believe, and in several cases even deny that there's such a thing as climate change. And those often who accept that there's climate change believe that it's part of a natural cycle. Now, we have clearly established through the work of the IPCC that yes, natural factors do have an impact on changes in climate, but what we are doing today and have been doing since the middle of the last century is essentially changing the climate because of human actions. So this is, I think, a very vital change that has taken place, and I believe the youth of the world really have to take the lead in bringing about solutions to this problem. I commend this greatly because, you know, yes, you can read a lot of things in books and papers. You can also get lectures in class by very knowledgeable teachers. But essentially, these are issues that require a lot of debate and discussion and some original thinking out of the box. And I think students, when they discuss these issues together and debate them in a serious and well-informed way, what you'll come up with is not only a higher level of awareness of what really matters, but you would also probably develop a resolve to do something about this. And I want to mention that I'm seriously now thinking of starting a global movement involving students, where we start focusing on the need to protect our planet. You know, there's been far too much of a preoccupation in people's minds with producing more, consuming more, materialism, and I think the time has come that we must understand that all of this is of no value if we don't support what's happening to the ecosystems of this planet, to the climate of this planet. And therefore, I think it's the youth that are going to make a difference. I would say that this kind of an exercise, this kind of an effort to get to the bottom of the real issues and to discuss them and debate them is not only something that creates enthusiasm, but possibly a much better understanding of what needs to be done. I think what really needs to be done is to go beyond textbooks. If you want to look at the impacts of climate change, I think one should show a lot of audio-visual material. There's an excellent show that was produced in the US called Years of Living Dangerously. And this has got some movie stars, it's got some prominent journalists like Tom Friedman of the New York Times. And therefore, what we really also need to do is firstly look at areas that are being affected by climate change. There are droughts, there's the problem of sea level rise, the Sundarban Islands which are sort of going under the sea. It would be very useful, even if people can't go there, but to get some footage or films and material that relates to some of these problems. And I think at the same time, we also need to focus on solutions. My institute has this program called Lighting a Billion Lives, where we are bringing solar lighting into the homes of villagers who otherwise would have no access to electricity, still don't have access to electricity. To my mind, that's one way of really improving people's welfare and at the same time doing it in a way that minimizes emissions of greenhouse gases. There are large solar plants that are coming up and a lot of other actions. So I think what we need is going beyond textbooks, and I hope schools will do that. I would only like to give students the message that you have to now take the lead. And if you look at what has happened yesterday with the announcement of the Nobel Peace Prize, here is someone who has devoted his life to rescuing children from tasks, from denial of opportunities that clearly are inhuman. On the other hand, you have this brave young lady, Malala, who, withstood bullets and violence, but stood by her principles and her beliefs. So I would tell students that tomorrow is yours, but you should also believe that today belongs to you. And that's the only way you can make tomorrow your own, and that's the only way you can deal with some of the serious threats that are facing this planet, that are facing humanity. The future is really in your hands, and I would say that you should feel enthused, you should feel encouraged and inspired to start implementing solutions, shame adults into doing things that they are not doing and should be doing. So I just want to appeal to the students to take on a level of responsibility which clearly belongs to you and which perhaps you have been very hesitant and somewhat diffident to take into your own hands. But you should now take this moment and make today your own, and certainly tomorrow has to be yours, because that's going to be your life, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir. So it was an honor talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank you. No, very good. Thank you. I hope my answers were all right.
So that's always.
Shall I?